Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on WhoKnewPodcast.com. You can leave comments there, or email us at WhoKnewPodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at WhoKnewPodcast, and find us on Facebook. Today's episode is episode 5 and 6 of season 4 of the Sarah Jane Adventures. We're doing Death of the Doctor. Sarah Jane Smith is played by Elizabeth Sladen. Daniel Anthony plays Clyde Langer. Anjali Mohindra plays Rani Chandra. So real quick, this is season 4. The last time we were visiting Sarah Jane was her wedding in season 3. You can listen to that episode on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast now. And the rest of the episodes that happened in season 3 were the Eternity Trap, that involved a manor that is haunted. And then Mona Lisa's Revenge was the next story. And you can kind of surmise what happens with that. The Mona Lisa becomes alive. And then
what does she do? Does she get anything?
This is actually the Mona Lisa painting wanting to be a human as opposed to something to just look at. And so the painting itself comes alive, not the person. And then the season 3 finale is The Gift, and that's where the Slitheen come back. And then in season 4, it starts off with The Nightmare Man, and that is where Luke, as Sarah Jane's son, the actor takes his departure as a regular cast member, and he is now going to Oxford University for school. Also in The Nightmare Man, Julian Bleach appears as the Nightmare Man, and we've seen him as Davros in season 4 of Doctor Who.
Oh, but we actually haven't really seen him.
We've seen his presence.
Right.
And then he's also the Ghost Maker in Torchwood. So he's one of the actors that has appeared in all 3 Doctor Who shows at this point. And then the one before the episode we're doing now is The Vault of Secrets, which brings back the Alliance of Shades, which is the Men in Black from Dreamland, if we remember those guys with the guns for hands.
It was the animated one, right?
Yeah, the cartoon.
Oh.
When Unit informs Sarah Jane of the Doctor's death, she has a hard time believing it. This episode is written by Russell T. Davis, directed by Ashley Way, originally aired on the 25th through the 26th of October 2010, and part 2 got the highest views with 0.96 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
This is Brian.
Hi all, this is Kelsey.
I'm Josh.
Hello, this is Auburn.
Hi, this is Frank.
Sarah Jane, Clyde, and Rani are video conferencing with Luke, who is off at school, when Mr. Smith informs them that Unit soldiers are approaching the house. They go outside and Sarah Jane blocks them from coming onto her property. Colonel Tia Karam regrets to inform them that the Doctor is dead and that DNA samples confirm it is him. A race known as Shansheeth are presiding over his funeral. Though Sarah Jane does not believe Karam, they watch a message from the Shansheeth explaining his death and agree to go with Unit to the funeral. They pack for the overnight trip, and when the car arrives, Clyde gets a static shock from the roof of the car.
I thought Luke getting a sense of humor was great, that he's teasing Clyde about Sanjay. This is the best friend I've ever had. And it's like, Luke's growing.
Yeah.
Luke is really having fun with that.
He's becoming human.
And you can see that the other two, Ronnie and Sarah Jane, are picking up on that he's teasing Clyde. So
They used the Unit Doctor Who theme, and I thought that was fun. I did wonder why Sarah Jane was so anti-Unit immediately. I know she doesn't like guns, and that's a whole running thing with Doctor Who now, but she was at Unit for years. I don't know if she was officially an employee of Unit, but she was connected to Unit for a very long time.
But remember when she met Captain Jack?
Too many guns.
Yeah, and she goes, I stay away from you and Unit. I stay away from Torchwood and Unit. So even then, she's like, no, I'm done with them because they've changed. And for them to all come, she's like, they're all coming here. It's like, okay, you stop. I know you guys. You're going to just walk over everything.
It was just really quick. I kind of wish it was just like, you're that group of Unit. You're the take charge, pull the guns out, and force people to do what you want.
That's
right
all
away.
of Unit in her mind. See, to me,
But
it was
what
like
if the Brigadier came out? If the Brigadier came out, she wouldn't have reacted that way.
Right. But that's him, not Unit. It's not a department of Unit. I think for her, it showed the strength she has of stop. You're not in charge here. To me, it didn't feel as abrupt, is all I wanted to say. It's like, yes, I could see that being abrupt, but to me, it didn't feel that abrupt because of what they did in the past.
Yeah, I guess I just took it as I have my way of life. I have the way of doing things. These people just come in and muck everything up.
When Clyde had his hand of electricity, it's like I knew something was up, but it did not register because it's been a while since I watched
Yeah,
The Wedding of Sarah Jane.
I took that as something was up with the car. Like, oh, are they not really Unit? Is it a disguise or something like that? Because I couldn't remember. I didn't remember at that time that leftover piece from the past episode.
Yeah, it was just, okay, there's something interesting. We're going to find out because it's Sarah Jane. They're going to tell us pretty soon. What's
Or he
going
just
on.
put on a sweater in the winter.
Well, and the electricity was our familiar blue color.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It looked familiar, but I just didn't go with it. I didn't
That's
try and delve
yeah.
into it. I was just, this is Sarah
Yeah.
Jane. You sit back and relax and watch it.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought, like, is that familiar? And then I thought, we're going to find out anyway, so just keep watching.
Right.
Yeah. Well, just the blue, and also the fact that Sarah Jane was incredulous at the doctor's death. So I know as an adult audience watching this show that's more geared towards kids that
Something's up.
something's up. The doctor can't be dead. So this is like our first hint that there's something else going on.
It was a little surprising when Ronnie's dad said, sorry for your loss. She goes, no need to be. It was a little too much for me.
A little too flippant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how it was also instantaneous. It's like, we hate to inform you the doctor's dead. She's immediately like, no.
All three of them were.
Also, since these are shorter episodes, I think they have to cut to the chase a lot more with everything.
Which is good sometimes.
Yeah. Also, too, come to think of it, like, since she's an investigative reporter, so don't all of these episodes start off with things aren't what they seem? Like, everything that happens in the beginning is like, well, this isn't going to be what it looks like. When he got the shock from the thing, I was like, well, obviously they're not really going to be good guys, or they're not really going to be Unit, or something's going to happen.
Yeah.
No, we can't have the TV characters learning a lesson.
I like that the Shansheeth are vultures. Like that made a lot of sense for the
Oh, I didn't even think
the
of that.
creatures
Yes.
that go and gather the dead.
I didn't even think of
Really,
that.
John?
I didn't,
No, the
I didn't
first
think
They
of
even
that. I
say
thought of
that
Sid
they
and Marty
go.
Croft.
They even
Yeah.
was
was
it
her.
Mr. Smith or
No.
Kareem?
Who's her?
It was
Kareem.
her,
She even
maybe-
says like they
you
go
may-
around the universe collecting fallen heroes,
From Battlefield.
just like vultures will go around.
Yeah, I get it. I guess I was distracted by how cartoonish they were. They were
Hey.
well done, but I thought it was.
It was Sid and Marty Croft.
Yeah, I thought.
They were doing it for 30, 40 years now.
Yeah, there you go.
Witchy Pooh's henchman.
Witchy poo.
What was his name?
Horse and vulture.
It was just that when I saw them, I thought I had to remind myself this was a kids show, more so than Doctor Who.
They reminded me of Skeksis from Dark Crystal. That's what they remind, like the cleaner version of them.
Right.
And later when we see more, they all feel pretty unique. Like even
They're not the same exactly.
right, like their necks are different and
They
they
all
have
had
different
different
hairs
color of
and
jewels on their
yeah,
head.
that was pretty cool. Because often we get villains that are like cookie cutter once you have one costume.
I will say that whether it was the voice actor or the actor in the outfit, but that voice fit that face. Like I just I'll put money down that voice actor looked just like that vulture.
We'll get there.
An interesting conversation that happens in the beginning that I found interesting and not problematic, but just like made me think about that could be problematic was when Rani was talking to her dad, and the way that she reacts to the news of the doctor's death is to go and hug her own dad and then be like, never leave, never go anywhere. Yet I'm gonna go run off with Sarah Jane. Bye. And I was just like,
See, I don't take it that way at all. I take it as somebody close to Sarah Jane has died and they're going to the funeral. But someone has died. That makes everybody reflective of all the people in their lives. That's what Ronnie's doing. But at the same time, now it's time to go to the funeral, which everybody does. And it's like, the Ronnie's going for Sarah Jane. Her father wouldn't go because, it's too removed. But I thought that was very natural. She's going to go and hug her father, and then she's going to go to the funeral for Sarah Jane. I didn't think it was...
Because they didn't know anything was wrong at the
Yeah, exactly. There was nothing
no
wrong.
danger.
Yeah,
which is
this was
going
just
to.
a funeral.
Well, I think it's the stuff that makes someone a companion. Most people can't handle all that stuff. Whereas if you're a companion and a successful companion, you can handle it.
I mean, Donna at the beginning couldn't.
Right.
But that was great
And
that
she knew that
it.
about herself.
And she knew it. So that was great that she was strong enough to go, yeah, this isn't where I'm going to be.
Speaking of the companions, the show started off with Maria and Luke, and then she went off and then it became like Clyde became the kind of breakout character. And then now with Luke, the actor, leaving, they put more of a spotlight on the Rani and Clyde relationship. So I like that when they're in the attic listening to the message, Sarah Jane is very dismissive and just shuts the message off. But Ronnie's the one to urge her to play it and to stop and listen, to find facts. And then, because it's mentioned in the opening sequence that there's an investigative reporter living next door, and when it cuts, it doesn't cut to Sarah Jane, it cuts with Ronnie. And so I think that that's nice that they're giving a young girl, in this case, more of an active role rather than a damsel in distress like we
Well, it's a
usually get.
replacement for the first girl.
But anyway, I just thought that was great that somebody younger was the one giving wisdom to stop and listen. And then when they're playing the message, the soundtrack that's playing underneath is a female vocalist, much like the 9th and the 10th Doctor theme from that era. But it's not the same, and to me it's not as good.
I was going to say, some of the effect, like we were saying, as cartoonish as the Vulture outfit was, and the puppetry was well done. The hologram looked really good.
Yeah, we'll see more of the Shansheeth, but I like the practicality of it. It wasn't like a CG Sladine. It was clearly a guy with the left arm being his actual left arm, her actual left arm, and then the other right arm being the one controlling the beak.
Yeah, it made me think of old school classic Who, but done even better, where it's not as obvious.
Yeah, they hid the seams better.
Yeah. But it's the fun of the show.
Yeah.
Which is perfect for this episode.
Yeah.
Bringing back the two companions from that period.
Yeah.
Arriving at the unit base inside Mount Snowdon, Colonel Karam escorts them to a room set aside for the wake. On the way, they run into a few Grask working in unit. Karam tells them that these are Grask, not Grask, who were stranded on Earth and become very helpful. They have built a rocket to release the Doctor's body into space inside a lead-lined coffin. Privately, the Grask tells Clyde that he smells of time, and Clyde's palm glows with blue electricity. Once at the wake, the Shansheeth play harp music so the mourners can remember the Doctor. The calmness is disrupted by a vase crashing as Joe Grant, now Joe Jones, and her grandson Santiago enter the room. Sarah Jane recognizes Joe from how the Doctor described her. They bond over their travels with the Doctor, and neither believe that he is dead.
So a couple things, because we're going to get to Joe. The Grask and the Grask are played by Jimmy V. Do we remember him?
Is that Bakalava?
Banakafalata. And the Mox of Balhoun. And the Grask, which they're referring to, is from Doctor Who, An Attack of the Grask, and also the Sarah Jane episode, Whatever Happened to Sarah Jane Smith.
Attack of the Grask?
Yes.
Is that a classic Who?
Nope, that is...
That was the
would...
name of it.
Hold on, I'm going to tell you. It's a New Year's or holiday special, and it was an interactive kind of video game that you played with your TV in the UK.
Oh, so it wasn't an episode. Oh, okay.
But the Sarah Jane one was an episode.
Correct. And that's why that one was, I believe, red, and then
Oh,
these guys are blue.
Okay.
And then they mention Unit Base 5, located in Mount Snowdon. We've heard of Mount Snowdon before in Army of Ghosts, in the finale of Season 2, where Rose gets stuck in the other Pete's world. They were the ones to get magna clamps from a crashed spaceship in Mount Snowdon. And then in End of Time with the Immortality Gate, they also got that technology from this same ship. So they just... But do we remember the Immortality Gate at the End of Time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
the
checking.
same ship as from Torchwood.
Yes, also
Not-
Torchwood.
well, yeah. But Mount Snowdon is the tallest mountain in Britain.
And then right here, the Colonel mentions that the Brigadier is still stuck in Peru. So that explains that.
And hasn't he been in Peru for a very long time?
Since the wedding in Season 3?
Yeah.
And who's on the moon base?
Liz Shaw.
That's right. That was the companion before Joe Grant
Okay.
to the third Doctor.
Aubrey and I were wondering why Martha wasn't mentioned, because isn't she connected to Unit?
I think she did her own thing at the End of Time, right? Not rogue in a bad way, but like her own bounty hunter, I guess.
Also, I don't think many people knew about this since it was a plot, since it wasn't real.
Yeah,
They
were
only-
these people
they only
actually
targeted
even
people.
really Unit? These people weren't actually Unit, or they were.
She was.
She was
But-
in it, but she was bad.
I think it's because they're appealing to the classic Who, because they're mentioning all classic companions, and Martha's a more modern companion. So maybe then the people watching were like, I know what's happening to Martha.
And would Sarah Jane and Martha have ever crossed paths? Did they at the one where
Season
everybody?
4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess a little mention would have been
Yeah.
You could
appropriate.
have just said that she was off on an assignment.
In Peru.
I liked the cartoonishness of the matte painting, just how over the top part of it was. But yeah, the way that it connected to the actual world was a little rough. Like the tunnel and the bricks, and then right away you got into cartoony super lair.
Which I think, like Josh was saying, this is kind of going for that old classic Who look. To me, you didn't have to do that. It could have been a little more smooth. It just, knowing what they've done so far in all the different shows, you could have done that better. It could have worked better.
I like the line where Sarah Jane says, "I wouldn't even know his face."
Yes.
Yeah, just her whole realization in those moments
Yeah.
of realizing, oh my God, this isn't even the person I just saw who I was. I don't know who this is going to be. She really had a lot going on in those moments.
But I like how that led to Joe saying, "You've seen him recently?"
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a
that
hard
was
conversation to witness as a viewer.
And Joe kept bringing it up, like every time, every interaction with the three of them just made it sadder and sadder.
And she did
Was.
say,
Oh.
she did say he said he would see her again. I also like that she's probably, well, maybe Liz, but she's probably the only companion who could say this line and mean it. "I tried calling you, but you were gone." So she had called Unit, and Unit said he wasn't there anymore because he had regenerated into the Fourth Doctor and took off. So it was like, it just felt right.
Yeah.
It
And
made sense.
I did like Joe saying he must have really liked you, and not in a
Yes.
self-defaming way.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like he
Not
doesn't
with
like me as much as you, but he must have really liked you. He came back.
It wasn't
so
like-
it was honorable. It was like she said that in such a great way.
It wasn't. It
It's so
wasn't
sad.
It
but-
wasn't the way Rose and Sarah Jane first acted with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they were trying to one up each other. This one was instantly a connection between the two.
Yeah, the first time it was an accident.
Yeah,
The
how did
first
Sarah
time-
say
Yeah,
it?
the second time was like, oh no.
She was like, when I
that
saw
hurts.
him last, she was like, wait, you saw him? Yeah, and then but then the first time, wait, there was more. You saw him more than once?
Yeah, they did a really
Rude.
good job out of I don't want to say building the world because it was already built, but laying out how the world is built with all these things that we're talking about. And it really makes the world that much more robust.
Yeah, I did like the
I might have a TV
montage
show.
of memories.
Yeah.
Showing the second and third Doctor.
Yeah.
Because he was in the Three Doctors for Joe's memories.
That's right, and the first
In the
Doctor.
first, when she was in the Three Doctors, and then also seeing the third and the 10th and the fourth, which had to be there for Sarah. And did Sarah seem saddened, or was she not believing her when the Colonel said, "No, he's been injured. You don't want to see the body. You really don't want to see it." So she accepted that.
I think that's when she realizes that.
She won't know who it was.
Exactly.
She may
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also felt like maybe she's starting to believe it's real.
Yeah.
Like it was just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think she thinks it's real, starting to think that it's real. And then she realizes, I couldn't even I couldn't even recognize him anyway.
Yeah, it's like, let me see for myself. Well, that may not mean anything because he won't look like that.
But then when Joe came and they both had the same feeling, he's like, "Oh,
Right.
good, there's somebody
Yeah.
who backed up that feeling."
Yeah.
Yeah, that conversation I really enjoyed between Sarah Jane and Joe. It kind of made these people real instead of like fictionalized sci-fi characters. Where Sarah Jane had that earlier conversation with Luke, video conferencing, saying that she would feel if the Doctor actually died, and then repeats it with Joe, and then Joe says, "Yeah, I have the same feeling that when the Doctor died, I would know." It just made that.
Even if he was as far away as Metabelius 3,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a reference to the Third Doctor. The Third Doctor went to Metabelius, tried to get there, and finally got there.
But I like that it's bringing like emotions to these characters that serve like one purpose, to like help the Doctor or to be exposition for the Doctor. And I think that's why I really enjoyed the Sarah Jane Adventures as a show. It just addresses like what happens to these companions that have been like left off of the show in classic Who, where in the modern show it deals with those repercussions of traveling in the TARDIS and what that does to somebody.
I also thought the actress who played Jo did a really good job, I don't think a lot of these companions who are really young 40 years later could do as good a job as she did. I really, I bought the whole thing. I also liked how her storyline after she left the Doctor followed how she left the Doctor way back when. She fell in love with that environmentalist, and at the end she's in love with him, so she stays with him. And here we find out that they got married and had a bunch of kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
Plus, Joe's going all around the world to stop environmental
Atrocities? maybe?
bad things.
Yeah.
So she's rescuing the Amazon rainforest. They're protesting oil rigs and things like that. That very much carries on from Joe's last episode with the Third Doctor.
She's basically just like Sarah Jane.
Just globally.
Just planet side.
Yeah.
Planet side.
And that was a very nice thing to add because Jo was not three-dimensional in the original stuff. I mean, she's a good character and she's fun, but Liz Shaw, who we mentioned earlier, was the third Doctor's first companion, and she was a scientist. She had a PhD and really was like, they literally got rid of her because she was too smart. They couldn't have the exposition. She couldn't say, I don't know what it is, because she's a physicist, And so they brought in Jo, and Jo is very much like, what is it? I don't know what that is. Oh, doctors, save me. And then she'd be like, I didn't need saving. I could have gotten out of it.
I liked how Jo and Sarah, like they weren't the same. They were very different. Jo had a huge family, 13 grandkids, where Sarah was like without a family until the beginning of this show. Even though their motives were very similar, like I liked how they were not the same person. They had very different stories.
Yeah.
So do we remember Jo Grant in the Terror of the Autons episode that we did?
No.
Well, she was the companion to the third Doctor in that
Is she
episode.
the one who crawled? Her only role in that episode was crawling through the.
No, that was Sarah
shaft?
Jane.
Sarah Jane
Oh, okay.
with Tom Baker.
It was the yellow daffodils.
The master.
Plastic
When he
plastic
shrank
thing.
people,
Yes.
which is back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Relevant.
I remember.
Was it the one with the trash bag monster?
No.
The plastic.
No, the plastic chair.
chair.
Plastic chair.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
Which looked like a trash bag by the end of
Yeah.
it.
Wow, because I don't remember Jo at all.
She looked very similar in that same kind of haircut.
Blonde still.
That's kind of Jo.
But Jo was a damsel in distress needed and to explain things because she was just there to be, since Liz was gone, well, here's a woman that could be your assistant, thrown into it. So the doctor didn't like her at first. And she was like, no, I'm more worthy than this.
Well, the brigadier assigned her to the doctor, and the doctor said, I don't need an assistant.
He was resentful of that.
But
The
he
episode that
treated
we're talking about.
he treated Jo the way men treated women in 66 or 67, a bit dismissive and don't get hysterical. But Jo
Hey, get my
also,
coffee.
yeah, but Jo did have, back in the day you would say, Jo was spunky. She had spunk, and the doctor was okay.
hate spunk.
He was okay with spunk.
But I like how the actress that plays Jo Grant, Kat Manning, she comes back into that role very quickly, where Billie Piper said she needed to rewatch episodes. So I enjoyed that, and how she gets introduced in this episode is that the Shansheeth are playing the harp to give Sarah Jane the flashbacks and the memories back, and then it's interrupted by Jo dropping a vase. And I it's like, that's kind of good character continuity, because that's kind of what she was with
There's
the
a
third
part
Doctor.
of me that thinks she was doing it intentionally.
Me too.
She was trying to disturb it, going, he's not dead.
Yeah, but I like that that's how, that's who she is, and then she's kind of bumbling over her excuses of why she dropped it. And speaking of that, she's accompanied by Santiago, her grandkid. Do we remember who that is?
I do.
The actor that plays Santiago Jones is Finn Jones, who plays Danny Rand, the Iron Fist, and Loras Tyrell from Game of Thrones.
Right.
Ah, okay.
He blowed up real good.
It's like he's like 16 here, maybe.
He
or
glowed
something.
up.
He's young. He's very young. Later in their room, Sarah Jane and Jo try to figure out what is really going on as the kids go to get drinks. On their way, they see the Grosk again, who says he is coming and runs. They pursue the Grosk through ventilation shafts. Clyde sees the Shansheeth through a grate playing the harp again. He overhears their plan to extract the memories of the Doctor from Jo and Sarah Jane, which will kill them. Clyde's hand glows, alerting the Shansheeth to their presence, who then try to catch them. Clyde, Rani, and Santiago run to get Sarah Jane and Jo.
I like that they put that the wake, the cradle, was just a ruse so they can play this harp and to see who has the strongest and best memories that they can use.
Yeah.
I kind of like that as the definition of going, okay, so the harp music, whatever that is going through them, is what they're going to be using. And it's like, okay, this one's strong, that one's not, this one's strong. So they picked up on Jo and Sarah Jane.
I also like that they did do that quick line to explain who these other people were. It was, they're just soldiers of unit. It's like, okay, I can see that.
You mean the people at the funeral?
Yeah. And it's just a throwaway line, but it needed to be there. Otherwise, it's like, who
Yeah, who
are
are
you?
they?
Yeah, because I was right before that line. I was thinking, I was like, oh, who are the other people in,
Yeah.
in the
It's
room?
like, all right.
I like the unit base with the largest ventilation shafts and grates.
I wonder how they came up with that idea because it
Yeah.
was very innovative.
With the arrows too.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
But-
that was funny. You even mentioned we were watching it, and they were like, "We're trapped," and you're like, "Except for this human-sized ventilation shaft."
Yeah. Well,
Might as-
yeah, where
they might as
Joe
well be
and-
Jeffrey's tubes.
Yeah, where Joe and Sarah are remembering together in that room. The grate is right between them. It's just huge.
I do like that moment, though, when... oh, it's too soon. Never mind. I'll wait.
Do we see the rocket yet?
Yeah.
The X-15.
That reminded me of like the Thunderbirds. It just looked like a facility that had one of the rocket ships from Thunderbirds. I think it's Thunderbird 1. I don't remember. That's what it reminded me of.
Well, I think it is kind of funny though that like they went through all this expense and effort to build a rocket to send this one man into space for his funeral. The whole big production.
Well, it's a doctor.
Yeah, I know.
They have
But
to
also
sell it.
wondering if the cross, they don't know. So the colonel just told them this is the reason they're building the rocket.
I know. It's
Oh,
just
yeah, I
kind
know.
of funny that all that was done. And
Like I said, they had to really sell it.
yes,
They had to fool Sarah Jane Smith, and she's not easily fooled.
that's right.
I like that the Grosk has a bigger role in this episode.
I
But
wish they had a name
but
for
that
him.
the actor
Yeah.
got- oh
An
yeah,
individual.
They didn't. They little Grosky or whatever. Grosky is what they nicknamed him.
The one with the
Wayne
pizza.
Grosky.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with the pizza.
Right.
I
That always reminded me of Newt's
Yeah.
den in Alien.
Absolutely.
The Shansheeth come out at night, mostly.
Why'd you put her in charge, man?
That's Santiago.
I thought the pizza was nice because it reminded me that we are still on Earth. Like the whole unit base with the space, with the rocket and with the Grosk. So much out of Earth stuff is happening. Like, but it was good to remember. Like, oh no, this is all happening on Earth. The Grosk have been living here. Probably have their favorite pizza place.
Probably.
And of course, is prepared for whatever.
The delivery guy gets to Mount Snowden. Like, your turn to go up there.
I did like the line where they said, well, why did you bring us here then? It's going to get cold. While listening to the music, Joe and Sarah Jane are in a relaxed, hypnotic state until it abruptly ends. They leave the room and run into the kids. Clyde starts speaking with the doctor's voice, saying that he is 10,000 light years away and he is tapping into Clyde's residual Artron energy so they can switch places. Suddenly, the blue light covers Clyde, and the doctor takes his place, leaving Clyde alone on an alien world. The doctor confronts the Shansheeth about stranding him on that planet and lying about his death. They apologize about stating his death prematurely and shoot him with an orange energy beam.
Rest in peace.
I like that we have a little bit more of the Doctor in the first part of this episode as opposed to how much we had of the 10th Doctor in the first part of this Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith episode.
Yeah, he has like one line.
And then that's it.
Yeah,
This
and this
time-
one they have a full conversation where it's like, is it really you? It's you. Oh, it's you. Oh, what is it?
I just enjoyed that we had more of Matt Smith in this episode because he's, of course, going to be in the second episode.
Right.
I like the transition of Matt Smith's hand
Yeah.
right next to Clyde's hand going, wait a minute.
My hand's not white.
And I think was it practical?
Yeah. I think
Did they have him there and just put his
Could
hand
have
there, or
been.
was it
Or some-
digitally put in?
Nah,
Because
that
it
was-
looked
Nah.
odd.
It
right.
didn't
The
look.
lighting
It didn't
seemed
look
off for
practical
some
to me, but why
Yeah.
wouldn't they do it practical?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
Would,
Well, exactly. That's why I thought, did something go wrong with that shot?
Well, they
Or
probably
something
had to
Bad idea.
put the camera a certain way and light it a certain way because there's someone hiding there, and so.
I thought the doctor's hand, like the geometry of it, was a little bit off. So that's what makes
That
me
could be-
feel
that
like
could be why
it
it
was.
reaching through.
Yeah.
That okay.
But I like the whole gimmick of it. I felt very Doctor Who like, and it's a very fantastic gimmick. Even though there's a lot of really fun stuff going on in this episode, that was the thing that really like upped the adventure and the fantasy of it and stuff. And then Clyde turns into another person, and then Clyde's on a planet. Like it became, even though this was a lot of fun when that happened, it became very exciting. I thought.
It was very much Michael Jackson black and white.
Yeah.
That's all I could
Oh,
sing
yeah,
when I saw
morph,
it.
yeah.
I kept singing that song in my head.
Yeah, with the morphing.
Yeah.
Those few years, like that was the new technology of morphing.
Oh,
and
the
stuff
morphing,
like
yeah.
that. That's why that video had that.
Can you remind us where this would have aired in the Doctor's timeline?
Oh, crap. crap. I wrote that down. I don't have it. I was looking for that. I knew it was
At
going to
the
come
end
up.
of the first season.
Okay.
Or season
season-
6. Season 5.
That's right.
So
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
He knows they're married. Okay.
They're on their honeymoon.
Okay.
He said they were on their honeymoon.
So yes, that would be after the Big Bang,
Okay.
end of season 5.
Okay.
Although it's not their honeymoon, it's the planet's honeymoon that they are on.
Oh,
But
really?
it's also there.
The planet
Well, their
buried an
honeymoon was on the
asteroid.
cruise ship. I'm just.
Yeah.
That was part of the.
But
And,
yeah, the planet had just married
The asteroid.
the asteroid.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
and then this would be before they aired the Christmas Carol, which we just did.
Okay. Right.
I did catch a little bit that I can't remember who it was, if it was Sarah Jane or Joe Grant, who seemed a little upset that he was traveling with a couple.
We're almost there.
All right.
When Clyde is speaking with the doctor's voice, is that Matt Smith's
Yes.
voice? It was hard to tell. They did a very good job dubbing that. I say that saying that I actually expected to see the 10th Doctor because I felt like the delivery reminded me more of the 10th Doctor.
I wonder if you thought that because all the flashbacks they showed of the Doctor were not of Matt Smith.
Could have been,
Because
yeah, could have been
because
that as
Clyde had
well.
only seen the 10th Doctor in the wedding episode where he got the Artron energy. So maybe that's why like that visually didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
And also,
Yeah.
this was written by Russell, so I was, yeah.
Speaking
I
of
was
that,
kinda-
this marks the first and only time that Russell has written for the 11th Doctor.
That's
Oh,
pretty
that's
cool.
interesting.
This is the last thing he wrote for it, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Here's the part where they're talking about the Doctor meeting old companions, and he mentions that Jo is a baby, but now she's been baked.
Oh yeah, that was harsh.
Yeah, I know.
Funny.
But that convinced Joe.
Funny.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Because Joe thought that he regenerated into,
To a baby, which was funny also
Yeah.
because Matt Smith is like the youngest
Yeah.
doctor.
So real quick about that line, because that made me go, yeah, Jo looks like she's had work done, or Cat Manning.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't think so.
And she was in a car accident where back then in the 60s there were no seat belts in cars. So
Oh, they were. They're just tucked underneath the seat.
well, I guess not in the one she was riding in. She was thrown through the windshield
Oh.
and the plate glass window. So she's had constructive surgery, and she sustained broken ribs, and her legs were smashed, and her
gosh.
back was broken, and of course stuff was done to her face. So she spent almost 2 years in and out of the hospital.
So by
And-
having work done, you mean like she didn't look
She looked
like
she had-
she did when she was on the show earlier?
Yes,
Supposedly.
because if you look at Elizabeth Sladen in her time on Doctor Who in the 60s, and you look at her on her time in Sarah Jane Adventures, she just looks older as opposed to having work done like Cat Manning does.
I guess when you said work done, I was thinking like plastic surgery.
Yeah.
But I mean like plastic surgery make yourself look younger.
Well,
Yeah,
were-
that's why I
Well, I
started
think
to
it was-
explain it.
Yeah, no, thank you for
Combination
explaining
of
because I
both.
was like, I didn't think it looked like she had work done, but
Yeah, so that's-
I
yeah.
understand now what you meant.
On that strange world, Clyde is standing near a device the Doctor built, and zap, they change places again, saving the Doctor as the energy beam stops. Clyde runs away with the others, and they hide in their room, but now Clyde is gone, and the Doctor is back. He grabs the hands of Sarah Jane and Jo, and the trio transports to the alien planet, switching Clyde to Rani and Santiago. Jo is sad that the Doctor never came back for her even when she tried to contact him. He explains that with his last regeneration, he went back to see all his past companions and proves it by telling her about her life and future grandchildren. Together, the three of them are able to fix the device so they travel back to Earth without trading places with Clyde. So now we're in a quarry, but they make it different colors so it doesn't look like a quarry we've seen over and over again.
And I also like that they mentioned it was a battlefield, so that gave him things to work with.
Yes.
And I don't know if the planet or just that location, but it's called Crimson Hearth. I think that's what they called it. And I took it that's why it was all reddish.
Reddish, yeah.
Yeah.
I only caught this last night when we were watching it, but now it's probably my favorite moment in the entire episode. When they're running away from the Shansheeth, the Doctor runs past Sarah and says, "Come along, Smith." And I only caught it last night, and I just thought it was the funniest thing.
It's like it's a throwback, or it's
Come
a,
along, Bond.
Yeah, it's like his normal thing that he
Yeah.
that says. The 11th Doctor, anyway. But I like how he mentions his last regeneration, and he went back to see all his past companions.
All of them.
So in the end of time, when he's visiting everybody from the Russell T Davies era, I think we mentioned this on our episode that he went and visited all the companions he's had at that point. And here it's confirmed that he did. So I enjoyed that.
He also mentions it as the last time I died. So that was definitely something that Russell brought to it. That it's not just a regeneration that is a death. And so he's continuing that since Russell wrote this. It's sad back in the classic, but it was a rebirth was still going on. New series that it is a death of one type of character going on to another.
I really like that scene between the two of them because she seemed pretty darn nutty through the whole episode, and it really showed a good part of her humanity and who she is as a real person between them.
And the feeling you didn't just leave me, you did come back at one point.
Yeah. That's there's a bit of redemption there from when she was upset from earlier, but it made her seem more like a real person than Kooky Aunt or Grandma Joe.
But it also was, again, sad. I mean, it was different back in the classic. She left to go get married. End of story. They needed a new companion. They didn't make a big thing of it. But this was, wait a minute, you have a married couple? You mean I didn't have to leave? We both could have joined you, but you didn't want me? It made it a very sad aspect to it.
I still see it from a character point of view where, yeah, she says that. You mean, we both could have, a married couple could have gone in the TARDIS? But we've seen that episode. She wouldn't have taken her husband into the TARDIS. They had too much work to do on Earth.
But it was more of her memory of, you said you were going to come back. You never did. Oh, wait a minute, I had a choice back then that I didn't realize I had?
Yeah, but you did.
That's the sadness was.
Yeah.
It was like, she wasn't thinking it at the time.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, because you were coming back, so it wasn't that big, but now you never did until now. And wait a minute, I didn't have to leave? For that reason? You could have taken both? It just was sad, the realization. But she did have a good life.
But the line that Joe says right here that really got me was, "Did you think I was stupid?" And I just love the way she delivered it. It like really hit all the emotional levels. And then that's where it's mentioned that she called from the Amazon, and then they said that the doctor had left UNIT, and then the doctor proves her wrong, that he did look into her life by referencing her trips in the Amazon and the river.
Her kids, her grandkids, and other grandkids on its way.
On one hand, I did find it very touching, but on the other hand, I also felt like he still left her in the dark. It is a very, too bad Arlene's not here. It is a very egotistic thing to be like, well, I checked in on you and I saw you were okay. So I felt it was okay to then move on.
But Joe was, you look.
I understand
that was the nice part about how Joe took things.
I'm not negating that.
You did look. I'm not forgotten. So that I thought was nice.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I'm not
Here's
beating
to
you
Arlene.
up.
No, I know. I'm just saying that it is a very egocentric thing to be like, well, I saw you were okay, so everything's fine.
And I just did not hear him talk that way.
Oh, he didn't talk that way.
He didn't say it that way.
He didn't say
come
that.
across
He
that way.
felt like he was giving her exactly what she wanted to hear, and maybe she was.
And I think as viewers who are not under the doctor's spell can see that.
Yes.
But in this case, like with Sarah, Joe was disappointed. Oh, he came back to you twice. But now that she's with the doctor, it's more of, oh, yes, you looked at me. Like, it gets a little groupie-ish, like cultish here with the doctor and his two female companions, like on this planet.
Yeah.
I even think, like, only because we just saw an episode of The Bachelorette, Joe says, did you think I was stupid? Which brings the doctor to her. They're having their conversation. And then during their conversation, Sarah Jane whistles. Like, I don't know if you guys have watched it. She interrupts their alone time to get back to her, which is a feature that happens on the Bachelorette shows a lot during the cocktail hour.
I don't remember that specifically, but I always thought that the doctor is fixing the machine. He walks over to Joe and has the conversation, but I thought Sarah Jane started to work on the machine, and she calls the doctor back, not to come back to me.
Oh no, and I don't think Auburn's saying that that's what's happening. He's just saying it reminds him.
Oh, okay.
Like it's
Like,
that
it kinda
dynamic
looks
playing
like
where
that.
these two women are pulling the doctor, and he's enjoying going along with either side.
Yeah. They're
watching a
both making
children's
him
show.
feel very important.
Yes.
I missed you so much. Oh, well, I saw on Facebook you were okay.
Yeah.
That really stuck in your craw, didn't it?
A little bit.
Okay.
Well, because I think we would all hope if we were companions for any amount of time and we leave the doctor and we say, will I see you again? And he says yes. Hopefully it'll be before we've had 13 grandchildren.
Yeah. I'll say this. I think it works really well. Like, this is the character. Like, I'm not negate. I don't think they should have written it differently. it's Arlene's influence has affected me, and I see these things. So.
And what I liked having Matt Smith here rather than Tennant, if she were to be with Tennant, is that Matt Smith has a little bit more of that third Doctor rapport with his companions. So he's going to say, yeah, that's stupid at the end of all this. And she goes, well, there we have it then. So it was how they, as a third Doctor and her, interacted. He would still dismiss or put her down in a somewhat joking fashion to get her more involved or motivated or something. You know, he would always, it was a different way of how he did it back then, you know, back how you said
it was almost like he was
Matt
pushing
Smith
her to be better.
Right, but Matt Smith can say that. He deals with that type of thing with Amy and how they banter. So it was a little bit more of that, and that worked with Jo. It didn't work with Sarah Jane when Tennant came along. That wouldn't have been the same dynamic. She was more with the fourth Doctor, who did it a little bit, but not as much. They had a different relationship. So I like that it was Matt Smith who able to do that because he did with Amy, can do that with Jo. And that Jo knows that's how he interacts with me. This is good. This is normal.
I think I even said this, David Tennant and Elizabeth Sladen, when you watch that episode, seem to have like known each other all their lives. It was instantly Sarah Jane and the Doctor who had known each other, even though David Tennant never worked with her. I felt that Matt Smith connected in that way more with Jo than with Sarah Jane. Not that it was bad, but it was just, maybe it was because you're comparing in your head. We've seen a different Doctor relate with Sarah Jane, but I thought he really connected with Jo very well, and he connected with Sarah Jane fine. Not bad, you know. And if Jo wasn't there and this was just Sarah Jane, it would have been fine. But, you know, you just watch School Reunion and you're like, oh, look at that, they're back together. And you watch this one and I feel, oh, look at that, they're back together with Jo. That's how I feel about it.
Almost like maybe just, and this may just be me reading into it, but Jo was the companion of this episode who needed convincing that was still her Doctor. Whereas like Sarah Jane is like, oh, I've seen you with a new face. I don't need to be convinced that you're my Doctor. Whereas like Jo is like, I'm still not sure about that this is my Doctor. But then they have that moment and she sees him almost change back into the Doctor that she traveled with. Now she's like, oh, okay, you are my Doctor. I'm convinced now.
Yeah, that's good.
And while this is going on with the adult actors and characters, I like that we flash to the other, on Planet side, that Clyde and Rani are comparing their lives with Santiago's life. So I like that we get this kind of quiet time with both sets of characters. And how Santiago says that he hasn't seen his mom in 6 months. And then we mentioned earlier, like Clyde and Rani would do these amazing things and then come back home for tea and say to their parents, oh, we did nothing, because they can't tell their parents what they're doing.
It was nice to give them a little
Screen time.
B or C plot, you know, just to make them a little bit more three-dimensional. And that, no, not everybody thinks lives like this are perfect.
You get to go there. You get to go there. You get to there. Dude, you just went to space. Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, but he broke the law. When he got transported to that planet, he was breaking the law, because the Jadoon, when they met up with the Jadoon, forbid Clyde from leaving the planet. Clyde was earthbound and had to stay earthbound or he would be arrested. And so when he clicked over to that other planet, it's like, I hope the Jadoon's not around.
But he didn't do it on purpose.
Did he say that?
Yeah, but he's still there.
No,
he didn't.
irrelevant.
Karam locks the kids in their room, but the Grosk breaks them out through the vents. He takes them to an area where they can hide, but Karam sees them on her monitor. She raises the temperature, planning to kill them as a lure for the Doctor. The Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Jo arrive back in the base and hear the kids crying out for help. The Doctor crawls through the vents, but Sarah Jane and Jo are captured. The Doctor frees the kids, and they all go to the funeral room, but it is sealed shut. What a terrible time for the Doctor to be without his Sonic.
I find it very funnily TV convenient that there are convenient human-sized heating filaments exactly where he has his room set up, and
That's how he keeps his pizza hot.
oh, that's a good point. Maybe that's why he chose it. All right, there you go. We logicked our way into it.
It's a new type of air conditioning and heating unit.
Right.
You can do section by section
Right.
with the ergotham.
And he, of course, chose the spot that is the most dangerous to set up camp with his Christmas lights.
I was surprised that Colonel Karam could hear the conversation that Rani and Clyde were having through that what looked like a metal or steel door. So
There was a lot of that.
Well, that's part of unit.
But it was
They make it
good.
look big and
Yes.
thick, but no, they want to hear, so what's the
But
secrets
it's
here?
actually good setup for what happens later in this episode. So when that happened in the episode, I totally bought it because I'm like, well, yeah, those doors are paper thin.
Right.
You can hear right through them.
The doctor brings up the ventilation, going, "Oh, ventilation shafts again." And I was thinking, what, the arc in space? And I wanted him to say and tease Sarah Jane about that. "Oh, I can't. Because in that episode she was trying to get through and just couldn't.
I also really like the moment where he's choosing who to save. And and I was right there with him too. Like, he was definitely debating back and forth. I'm like, you have to save the kids. It's just what you have to do. But I could definitely see him going through that whole process. And
Their lives are more imminent peril.
Yeah.
But I like the Colonel. Yep, save the universe or save the kids is doing the wrong choice.
And then while they're crawling to the ventilation shafts, the doctor's going backwards and Clyde's
funny.
going forwards. That's great. And then that's where Clyde asks the doctor all these questions.
Right.
They're like, how many times can you change? And he says 507. This is a joke because those numbers add up to 12, a Time Lord's official number allowed of regenerations. And then he mentions, can you change color?
Do you always have to be white?
That's what it is, yes. So I like that too. These are nice questions.
And his
He
answer?
says, "Do you always have to be white?" And he says, "I can be anything."
Mm-hmm.
So, like it.
Well, I liked having the eyes to the window of the soul. I mean, I thought the eyes would be the same.
Right.
I liked that little bit that Clyde had. I mean, you changed everything. This is the one thing that I would be able to recognize.
That's something that I wouldn't expect Clyde as a teenager to say. So that was a really nice touch to show, I guess, how mature he is. And then earlier when the Colonel is listening and she figures out that the kids know what's going on, and she goes, they're not as daft as they look, and they're a bunch of ASBOs. We mentioned that, I think, in School Reunion, where ASBO stands for Antisocial Behavior Order, and that's something that they implement in the UK. And she also mentions the Brady Bunch.
I don't remember that. When did she? What's the line?
The same thing. Like the Brady Bunch isn't as daft as they look, I think.
yeah, that's right.
I did like that Sarah Jane said, "Back up," because she has the Sonic and she's taking charge of opening up the vents. And Joe going, "You have the Sonic, you should go next." Logical ways of thinking. There's no pretense. There's no self-importance. It's like, no, we're all here for doing the same thing, and we're just saying this is what's going to work best. So I like that.
Inside the room, the Colonel and the Shansheeth have the TARDIS and strap Sarah Jane and Joe to a device called a memory weave. Extracting the memories of the Doctor from their minds, the device can create a tangible key to the TARDIS. Once they have access into the TARDIS, they can use it to go back in time and stop death from happening to all those they have buried. The device starts to pull the memories out of the two women while they try to fight it. The Doctor and the others try to break into the room but are unsuccessful. So basically, this memory weave is a 3D printer.
I liked that idea of the memory.
I do too, but it just seems so simple. Like, we're gonna get these people, extract their memories to create a tiny key.
Well, I like that it's called memory weave.
Yeah.
Like when you weave something, you're building something. So,
But it also seemed like they told them to think about the key, and it's one of those,
Yeah.
don't think about a purple elephant kind of thing. So
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had to, and they
yeah.
were locked on it, and the memory was just taking that information out of their brain. And they were fighting it, so that's what I think was part of the struggle to kill them. It's like, well, we know they're going to fight it, so that's going to kill them, no problem, but we have to take that particular memory.
And it's smart that they set up this whole ruse of a funeral so that they can think about the things they want them to think about.
Right.
The headpieces were a little cheap, like as far as production goes, and
On the two women.
On the two
Yes.
women, yeah. In an episode that felt really, really valuable, like really high value in the productions. But I did like the Clockwork Orange feel of as the women were remembering and couldn't
Yeah.
stop themselves from remembering.
We just needed the little eyedroppers.
Yeah, especially Joe. I mean, she was into it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the headbands now because you brought them up. And now that I'm thinking about them, they actually fit with the classic. in a
Especially
way.
after doing Warriors of the Deep, where there was pipe cleaners used at the end device, if you remember that.
right.
I thought it was interesting. They gave the Shansheeth the depth of saying they were so weary and tired of seeing all the pain and grief, and it's just everywhere. So it was a little bit more of a noble feeling of, no, we can go back to all those other battlefields and stop this from happening. But then it went a little bit further, going, and the whining and the crying, so then they got a little bit more, okay, yeah, you're doing this just so it bugs you. But I thought it was an interesting take on it.
Were these rogue like Shansheeth, or were
Yes.
they?
Yes.
Supposedly. At the end, they say, yeah, they were rogue, but
If they were so altruistic, realistic with their wanting to take the TARDIS to stop wars, they wouldn't have threatened the lives of these people right here.
Can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs.
I guess.
I see what
well,
you
they
did
just
there.
lay
The needs of the
more.
many outweigh the needs of the few.
They're vultures, not Vulcans. Vulcant.
Finished.
Yes, I'm done.
I like how Sarah Jane explains why the Shansheeth and other races can't have the responsibility of traveling in the TARDIS.
Right.
It felt like a very Doctor reason that she gave. Like, it's something that the Doctor would have said, but I like that she says it. It reminds me that companions who travel with the Doctor after a certain amount of time, they almost
it.
turn in. Yeah, they get it. I don't know, because what was the reason that she gave? Does anyone remember? I don't remember the words,
you can't
but
just change history because you want to. You know, that's why you can't have it.
yeah.
I want to know what the Colonel lost, or who the Colonel lost. It was, well, why are you doing this? We get what they're doing it for. And she goes, there's nothing left for me here now. And you just see the loss. I want to know what happened, and we never learned. But she delivered it well enough that it got me sympathizing with her a bit. Going, okay, what happened?
Yeah, and I would hope if this was a Doctor Who episode instead of a Sarah Jane episode, we would have gotten more of her backstory, because we did have 3 leading women, and yeah, the Colonel, she did good when she was on screen, but she didn't really get much of that depth. Yeah.
For the rest of it, she was like, okay, you're the bad one, and we got it. And it's because of being the Sarah Jane. Yeah, we just need somebody to be the bad person at this point. So they had a strong woman, but this gave her just that one scene gave her more depth. She did it really well.
I agree with you, Frank. I like that moment too. It showed the respect that Russell has even for his kid audiences. That he's,
Yeah.
It's not gonna just.
When I saw he wrote this in the beginning, thinking that through, anytime it took sort of a turn where I was like, I don't know about this, it'll be fine. Russell wrote this one and it'll come around, and it always did.
The Doctor yells through the door for Sarah Jane and Joe to let go and give the device all of their memories. Everything, every detail of their extraordinary lives. Their memories begin to overload the device. Consoles begin to explode, and the weave begins its auto-destruct procedure. Sarah Jane gets free and releases Joe. They run to the door, but can't open it from this side either. Joe mentions how ironic it is that the Doctor's funeral will be theirs instead. Suddenly, everyone remembers the coffin in the room is lead-lined, and it may protect them from the blast. Sarah Jane and Joe jump into the coffin and close it. The memory weave device explodes, killing the Shansheeth, smells like chicken, Colonel Karam, and blowing the room's doors off their hinges. The Doctor and the others rush in and find Sarah Jane and Joe fine in the coffin.
Smith and Jones. We get them back. That's the thing that Russell always wanted. He liked those 2 names, last names, and so that's why he had Martha Jones and Sarah Jane Smith
There's
and Mickey
another
Smith.
called-
Mickey Smith.
Mickey Smith, yeah. Martha's first episode because of John Smith and Martha Jones. So it's Russell putting in his touchstones that, I don't know, to me they don't call themselves out with a spotlight, but I like that they're there because they're familiar and they remind me of like a nice place I used to live.
Well, I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't say it in the episode, because Joe is, she's Joe Jones now, but we all know her as Joe Grant.
Yes.
So if they had called it out in the episode, it would have been like, wait, her name's Grant.
And the other thing is that she married a guy named Jones in her last episode, The Green Death. So it wasn't like Russell wrote that she had married somebody.
I just assumed he just threw that in
No,
there.
and I think that's very convenient, and like he picked up on it and he ran with it. I love that.
It's like 4 beats of the heartbeat of a Time Lord. He just got lucky.
I did like that, the Doctor just seconds before Joe and Sarah Jane realize it. It's my funeral. It's my funeral. He doesn't say anything else, and they pick up on that, going lead-lined coffin. So they both get it, and they all kind of come to it around the
They're
same time.
smarter than me. I didn't get it.
But it was nice that they own that they are companion material. They own it.
And then to me, this ties back into what we did with the end of season 5, and that memory is a powerful weapon. So he's using the memory weave as a weapon instead of the weapon against him, and to get access to the TARDIS, he's now using it to overload the memory weave.
Memory
Stop
weapon
finding
weave.
it. Let it-
And in that flashback where they're overloading the memory weave, we see like even a bunch of the doctors, and then we see even stuff that the Sarah Jane Adventures has gone through. And one that stuck out to me was the flashback with the clown.
Yeah.
And the clown is Bradley Walsh, who plays Graham on the new show.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? No way.
I did like that they had Santiago tell his grandmother Joe, remember all the stuff you've done because of this, all
Yeah.
the places you've gone to. So
Yeah, it made me
all
wanna,
of your
like-
memories that were somehow connected to the doctor and just focusing it in. It's like, there's a lot of memory for those two people.
Again, I'm glad that the doors in Unit are so paper thin. Otherwise, this scene would have been a
That's
lot more
right, it's
difficult
true.
to happen.
Just a big boom, and the doors are still there. The doctor opened up communications to the room.
Yeah, so why were they still shouting through the door?
He started shouting, but after he turned on the intercom, he's at the door whispering, like with a very like low voice.
The Doctor uses the TARDIS to transport everyone to Sarah Jane's attic. He says goodbye to them and heads back to Amy and Rory. Joe and Santiago head off to Norway. Clyde and Rani ask about other previous companions, and Sarah Jane confesses she has searched for TARDIS on the internet and lists off those from the past who continued to fight to make the Earth a better place. With all those people carrying on in the Doctor's name, can he ever truly die?
Yeah, I like that Sarah Jane went through all those different companions. Do you know if are all of those
Yes.
actual companions?
Thank you for asking.
I'm particularly interested in the professors that haven't aged. Like,
So, starting off with stuff that we've done, Tegan Jovanka is fighting for Aboriginal rights. We saw Tegan in the 2 episodes we did with the Fifth Doctor.
Tegan.
Both of them. Yeah.
She was the flight attendant.
She was in
Flight
the
attendant.
80s
Yeah.
kind of dress. Yeah.
Ben Jackson and Polly Wright are running an orphanage in India, and they were with, I believe, the First Doctor, and then with the Second Doctor.
For like an episode or two.
Yeah. And then Harry Sullivan, who we saw in Ark in Space and Genesis of the Daleks. Harry is said to have worked with vaccines and saved thousands of lives. He's referred to in the past tense by Sarah. Harry was previously implied to be dead in the novel of The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. The actor that played Harry is Ian Marter, and he died in 1986.
And Harry was traveling with Sarah Jane and the doctor.
Right, yeah.
He was
I
the
remember
unit
that.
medical doctor. Well, he was the doctor. He was a naval doctor. And then now, Ian and Barbara Chesterton are professors at Cambridge, and according to rumor, haven't aged since the 1960s. This suggests that something they encountered in their travels with the First Doctor caused them to stop aging.
Oh, okay.
So they were the very first companions with the First Doctor and his granddaughter. And they're teachers at
Coal Hill School.
Susan's school.
And
And
then-
we were joking going last night. It was like, well, we don't know any reason why they wouldn't have aged. And then it was like, well, they're still traveling with the Doctor, so they're just
popping in and
jumping around.
And then when they left in 1989. It was like, oh, okay. So they didn't age much from before, from 63.
A companion called Dorothy is said to have raised billions of pounds through her charity, A Charitable Earth. As the charity spells out these words, ACE, this is likely the Seventh Doctor's companion.
With a baseball bat who beats some Daleks.
Right.
And they made that canon recently.
That's good.
Because they're releasing the Seventh Doctor's season, one of his seasons on Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray commercial starts with showing a Charitable Earth Foundation, and it goes into the chairman's office, and you see a woman standing next to, looking out over the big city, and she turns, and it's Ace.
I do remember that now.
It's like, oh, that's so awesome.
And I think the name Dorothy was in her first episodes, the serial. I think it was Dragonfire.
That's her real name.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
she never goes by that. She goes by Ace.
Because her origin is very convoluted, and eventually she was supposed to become a Time Lord if the show had continued.
Really?
Or you put an opinion down.
Wasn't it ever explained? Because I remember thinking at one point during this episode that because Clyde in an earlier episode had that connection with the TARDIS, I wonder if he could have been opened the door by just touching the TARDIS, if the door would have opened for him. And it was like, oh, it's too bad the Shansheeth didn't know that. They
Right.
could have just had grabbed Clyde and had him open the door. And then that made me think, is that why the Doctor was able to use Clyde as a conduit into...
The Archon energy.
Okay. Oh, so that was
That
explained.
was the whole reason why. Yeah.
Oh, so that's what the Archon energy
And-
was. I remember you reading that, but I didn't know what it was.
I'm also assuming, or deducing, and I want to be sure everyone else is on the same page, that the Doctor has been trying to do that for a while. So that's why the Ark hit him on the car. You know, that was the Doctor's attempt to switch places with him.
I didn't catch that. I just
And
thought
then
it was residual.
now finally, okay, now I have enough power. I've built this up. Now I can transfer to it. That's how I saw it, and I just wanted to know.
These two episodes, or I guess the last episode, also marks the only appearance of the original master, Roger Delgado, in the Sarah Jane Adventures because of Joe's memories, and the only time that William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton appear in the show as the first two doctors. This story was also the last to feature Sarah Jane and the Doctor together on screen. The other ones that we didn't mention for the cast members here are Tommy Knight plays Luke Smith, Matt Smith plays the Doctor, Ace Bahati plays Harish Chandra, which is Rani's dad, Alexander Armstrong is Mr. Smith, the computer, Lila Rouse plays Colonel Karam. We mentioned Jimmy V playing the Grosk, Philip Hurd Wood is a Grosk voice, Paul Casey, who's normally in Doctor Who, is playing the Shansheeth, and Ruari Mears is also playing a Shansheeth. Then for the voices, we have David Bradley playing Shansheeth Blue, who did Walder Frey in Game of Thrones and Harry Potter. He was the grounds Filch. And he also played the first Doctor in upcoming episodes. And then in flashbacks, I'm just going to go through the ones that we might know. Tom Baker plays the Doctor. David Tennant plays the Doctor. John Pertwee plays the Doctor. William Hartnell plays the Doctor. Patrick Troughton plays the Doctor. And then we get Yasmin Page plays Maria Jackson. Roger Delgado plays the Master. Nigel Havers plays Peter Dalton, the man that Sarah Jane was going to marry. Nicholas Courtney plays the Brigadier. Ian Marter plays Harry Sullivan. Billy Piper plays Rose Tyler. There's a lot of flashbacks. So that wraps up Sarah Jane Adventures, Death of the Doctor. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You've just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
All our episodes are engineered by Allburn.
You can find him at albernbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher.
Or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/whoknewpodcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to help support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, enable the AnyPod podcast skill. Ask AnyPod to play the Who Knew podcast.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who.
The longest running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival, spearheaded by Russell T. Davis,
Thanks to Russell,
Sydney Newman,
Verity Lambert,
Ron Grainer,
Delia Derbyshire.
And all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
your work continues to inspire and entertain.